Now, this Veterans Day, a group of Democratic lawmakers in Congress are trying to revive an effort to pay the families of black service members who fought on behalf of this country during World War II for the benefits that these black soldiers were denied or prevented from taking full advantage of when they came home from the war. There, a new guy here in Atlanta, Hosea Williams, civil rights activist, fiery guy. God, I love this man. I mean, Hosea was one of those people. He worked with Dr. King and some of the civil rights leaders in the 50s and 60s and 70s. But Hosea was just an absolute, I don't know, he was a firecracker. He was somebody, if you were around him, you got caught up in whatever he was doing. And what he was doing 99% of the time was trying to work for racial justice in this country. But Hosea Williams was a World War II vet. And he told this story probably 1,000 times, but he told it to me one time. We were having beers at Emmanuel's Tavern in Midtown Atlanta, and which was a gathering place for all sorts of people. I've mentioned it before. But we were in there one evening, not prearranged. I just happened to run into Hosea. He was there for something else, something important. And when we saw each other, we decided to have a beer together. So we were sitting in a booth, and the reason I knew him was because I helped out on his Feed the Hungry events on Thanksgiving and MLK Day and Christmas and stuff like that. And that's how I got to know him. And the fact that I was working at WSV Radio at the time, the big station in Atlanta. But anyway, I never would have met him had it not been for that. But anyway, we're sitting there talking, and he told me the story about when he was mustered out of the Army. He came out a sergeant. He had seen combat in World War II, I think in Italy, which was the same area of combat that one of my uncles was involved in. But he mustered out at the port of Savannah and decided to take a train to come back to Atlanta, which is where his home was. And he couldn't get a seat on the train unless he agreed to sit in the colored section. Now, here's a guy who just had fought for freedom and justice in the American way through the bloody battles of the invasion of Italy and probably wherever else he fought. And he had been wounded in combat. It turned out to be not a life-threatening wound. It was a bullet wound. It was a shell wound, I think, explosion, actually. And it had damaged his arm and shoulder. I believe I've got that right. But he had fought. He'd shed blood for the United States, and he came back, couldn't get on a goddamn train to come back to Atlanta from Savannah. Just the way the rules were. It was 1946, I guess, 45, 46. Back of the train, nigger. Excuse my use of the N-word, but that's just about what it was. So he rode in the back of the train. And when he got to Atlanta, that was part of what made him decide that the rest of his life he would dedicate to equality under law in this country for African Americans. So now a group of Democratic lawmakers is trying to get the benefits that World War II soldiers were promised, but if they were black, sorry. This new legislative effort by these members of Congress, actually it's the Senate, I think, would benefit surviving spouses. Because, I mean, let's get down to seriousness, how few World War II veterans are left, how few African-American World War II veterans are left. So the surviving spouses and all living descendants of black World War II veterans whose families were denied the opportunity to build wealth with housing and educational benefits through the GI Bill. The GI Bill! And if you were black, If you were in the South, fuck you. You don't get it. Why? I'm a veteran. Get out of my office, boy. Now, since 1944, those benefits have been offered to millions of veterans. So many of the great writers in the 50s and 60s took advantage of the GI Bill just to study. Writers, artists, painters, theater, construction workers, scientists, engineers. Yeah? They were trying to transition back to civilian life. But due to, racism in how these grants were given through local Veterans Affairs offices, you see, that was the problem. You're a soldier. You come back to Georgia. And World War II, your ass was shot. You were there to defend America. And you go to the local VA office to apply for your duly authorized benefits, and you were told, we'll get around to you, boy. Next. So because of that, so many black World War II veterans got much less money toward purchasing a home, for example, or continuing their education. The Senate bill was introduced today, Thursday, by our newest senator here in Georgia, Senator Raphael Warnock, who is the son of a World War II veteran. Warnock said when he introduced the bill, quote, "We've all seen how these inequities have trickled down over time." And he added that the bill, quote, "represents a major step toward righting this injustice." And a version of this in the House was introduced last week by the Representative Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, who is the part of the Democratic leadership, and Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts. Clyburn, when he introduced the bill in the House, said, quote, "This is an opportunity for America to repair an egregious fault. Hopefully it can also begin to lay a foundation that will help break the cycle of poverty among those people who are the descendants of those who made sacrifices to preserve this democracy." Wow. But this democracy right now is under threat, right? By black people? No. By Jews? No. Muslims? No. Hindus? No. Who? White Christians. That's who. Now, Representative Moulton, who is helping with this, Seth Moulton of Massachusetts, he's a Marine veteran who served 4 tours during the Iraq War. He said, quote, "There are a lot of black Americans who are feeling the effects of this injustice today, even though it was originally perpetrated 70 years ago." That's when so many of these black veterans were told to piss off. Moulton said, quote, "I think that restoring GI Bill benefits is one of the greatest racial justice issues of our time," end quote. Yeah, well, there's that. And there's also the unfairness of grants through the Department of Agriculture to black farmers who were struggling to maintain their farms and their land here in the South. I'm not talking about Reconstruction. I'm talking about the 60s, 50s, 40s. And they were fucked over, as black folk are, constantly, continuously, unendingly. The legislation that these members of Congress are proposing would extend the VA Loan Guarantee Program and the GI Bill Educational Assistance Program to black World War II veterans and their descendants who are alive at the time of the bill's enactment. It would also create a panel of independent experts to study inequities in how benefits are administered to women and people of color. Then we have Lawrence Brooks. This man is 112 years old. He's the oldest living United States veteran. He was drafted to serve during World War II and assigned to the mostly black 91st Engineer General Service Regiment, it says here. He's from Louisiana. He has 12 grandchildren, 23 great-grandchildren. He always believed that serving his country was the only way he could leave behind his life as the son of sharecroppers. That's according to his daughter, Vanessa. After he was discharged, Mr. Brooks, in August 1945, as a private first class, he did not realize his dream of going to college. Instead, he went to work as a forklift driver, and then he retired in his 60s. His daughter Vanessa said, quote, he always wanted to go to school, end quote. And when he bought his home, according to his daughter, he had to use his retirement fund, not GI Bill benefits, because, well, I mean, what the hell? He was black, right? And as a bit of history, President Roosevelt signed something called the Servicemen's Readjustment Act in 1944, and that made generous financial subsidies available to 16 million World War II veterans who were going after higher education or buying their first homes. And irrespective of race, the way the law was written, veterans who served more than 90 days during the war and had been honorably discharged were entitled to the benefits. But guess what? After returning from the war, black veterans and white veterans faced two very different realities. Gee, who would have thought? See, the GI Bill benefits had to be approved by local Veterans Administration officers. Very few of them were black. So the process of getting approval created an awful lot of problems for veterans, and that was particularly acute, those problems in the Deep South, where Jim Crow segregation imposed these racist barriers to home ownership and education. So the black soldiers who were returning, who had shed blood for the country, were fucked both places, trying to get a better education, trying to buy a home. And buying a home is one of the most essential wealth builders in America, always has been. But at the end of World War II, guys who had gone to fight and die, fight and get wounded, fight and be insulted when they came back, were further insulted when they were told, sorry, bro, go stand over there, boy, we'll get to you. And the way it went, local VA officers either made it difficult for black veterans to get their benefits, or they lessened the value of say, home ownership by steering black veterans away from decent neighborhoods or predominantly white four-year colleges, and steer them toward vocational and other non-degree programs. You don't want to be an engineer, boy. You want to be a forklift driver. No, you really do. Trust me, boy. Let's just work toward making sure that black veterans and their families, their descendants, because we're talking 70 years ago, would be compensated at least up to the equivalent of what they were denied. Jesus Christ, when you stop and look at this is what critical race theory is about, by the way. When you look at how the institutionalized racism in this country has been so torturous, so evil, and in so many ways denying our black brothers and sisters a decent opportunity. It's a wonder. It's a wonder the black folk haven't just gone completely insane. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.